Our top focus, of course, remains the budget. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has addressed the media at the start of the Parliament's budget session today. Interestingly, the Prime Minister invoked Goddess Lakshmi for the poor and the middle class in his address. Well, Prime Minister Modi's mention of the middle class in the context of the budget session a day ahead of the Union Budget speech has now left everyone wondering if Budget 2025 will provide a much needed income tax relief to the Aam Aadmi, to the common man. Is that even possible? What could that possibly look like? I take all of these questions forward. I have with me Mithali Nikore, an economist. We have with us Yatendra Khemka, CA, an economist, and Mr. Yugendra Kapoor, senior economist as well. Let me begin this conversation with Mithali. Mithali, of course, for the past 10 years, we've been having the same conversations as far as income tax is concerned. Yes, in between, there was a new tax regime that was introduced by this government, which everyone felt was towards a better future for the salaried class, and that it provided some more options to the people. And certainly, the revisions in the tax brackets did perhaps make an impact, but ultimately it boils down to what more can the government do for the salaried class. Firstly, what's your reading of what the government could possibly do?
So first of all, Devika, it's really good to join you in the studio after all this time. So thank you so much for having me here. And well, you know what I'd say is the first thing that we have to think about is what brought this government to power. Who got this government to power? It was the middle class actually, who has overwhelmingly and for the last 3 terms completely provided unwavering support to the Prime Minister and to his government. So I think that somewhere there is an understanding amongst the government officials, amongst the finance ministry, that some relief will need to be given to the middle classes, some relief needed in the salaried classes as well as to the MSME segments, because these are overwhelmingly people who might be reeling from a cost of living situation, who might be reeling from an inflation, food inflation hitting them hard in terms of, and this is also showing in terms of the consumption expenditure falling, as we have seen the economic survey also pointing out that there is some consumption stress in the economy, and that is primarily coming from the middle classes and lower income classes. Having said that, I expect that one of the major reforms that might be announced tomorrow, may not be enforced from tomorrow but will be announced surely, would be around the direct tax code. And this is, you know, based on information that we are getting through various sources, that we find that the direct tax code might come up with new categories and new classes of, you know, diversifying and looking at the way income categories are classified. So that is a possibility. And the second thing that we might look at is, you know, the below 10 lakh segment. I mean, this is the segment which is providing the least amount of revenue to the government, but it is the segment which is actually suffering the most at this point in time with the cost of living situation. So it is a possibility that the below 10 lakh segment will see some relief in the tax rates. I mean, these are 2 possibilities that we are hearing about at the moment.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Let me also rope in Mr. Yatendra Khemka into the conversation. Mr. Yatendra Khemka, quite interestingly, the government had reduced corporate taxes in 2019, and we saw that over the years, corporate tax has actually reduced in terms of revenue for the government. The corporate tax is reduced, and the direct income tax of salaried individuals has increased in the government's share. But what really did that experiment of reducing corporate tax to ensure that there are more people who are have the risk, you know, the risk to take, or rather the ability to take risks which are required in businesses, that you know, mindset and space is there for them. What really has that experiment of the government really taught them in the past few years, when they decided to ensure that, okay, let's not heavily tax our corporations, but continue with taxing salaried individuals?
Ma'am, we have seen that the impact of reducing the corporate tax in last years, that corporates have more money to distribute as salary as well as to do some expenditure in relation to their expenses and other things. But what exactly had happened, that they have definitely have spend some money for expansions, but desired amount has not been yet been invested, and corporates are not investing. There are around huge cash lying in top corporate itself, lying in their books idle, and they are not investing in the country. And basic reason for this is that most of the corporates and manufacturing sector is uh, working on around 7 to 75% of their capacities, and they are waiting to invest when they reach around 80%. And I am very hopeful that new policies will enthusiasm that they will come out with more investment, which will encourage the economy, as well as which will give employment to the new people in the industry as well. And I am very hopeful this time that government will try to reduce the individual taxation as well. And my humble submission, I have written so many times to the finance minister as well, and to the prime minister too, that there must be a new slab in between 20 to 30%, and that should other slabs also should be rationalized, as you said. And I am very hopeful that up to 10 lakhs there may be 5% slab will be for up to 10 lakh of income people. And but as far as taxpayers are concerned,
Yes.
we have to be more honest, as well as especially the business class should be more honest in paying their taxes.
Okay, but Yogendra Kapoor, when we say that the salaried individuals now need to be more honest in terms of paying income tax, what is it that the government can possibly do at this point in time to actually encourage that sort of a mindset shift for the people?
Right, Devika. See, I think we need to look at from multiple angles. The middle class believes that it has been the most ignored class when you make a comparison between the rich class and the poor class. Because what happens is that the rich class, they tend to pay lower of taxes as compared to the individuals. And they tend to get more of credit facilities as well from the banks and other institutions. The poor class, they get away with freebies, and obviously they cannot compete with the middle class in terms of payment of taxes. So it is the middle class which ends up paying the most of taxes. And you see, the problem arises that when they see that the contribution that they are making to the economy, and in retrospect, are they getting the required services, whether it is the required education is concerned, required medical services is concerned. I'd like to share some stats. In India, you will be surprised to learn that over half of our population doesn't have a senior school as such to cater to the education in the country. If you look at the medical services, majority of our population still remains uninsured. So the point is that, I think the need of the hour is that the government needs to ensure that more money comes into the hands of the people, because that will ultimately help the economy, because once the money comes in their hands, it will go into the economy by way of spending in goods and services. It is already a case that we can see that the level of consumption has fallen in our economy, which is not good for our growing economy. So I think the need of the hour is that government needs to focus that how the middle class can be benefited, whether through the tax breaks or through new innovative schemes through which they tend to generate more of income.
Okay, Mitali, coming back to you. It's now been almost 4 years since the government introduced the new tax regime. Do you think that having these two tax regimes, of course, when they introduced it initially, they wanted to keep the old tax regime so that you could sort of ease people into the new tax regime, you could make the new tax regime more attractive, etc. That's what the government did. But do you think that the government, how long do you think the government can actually continue with having these two tax regimes in the country? How much more time will it take for people to actually start finding the new tax regime better? Is the new tax regime even better in all circumstances?
So I know, Devika, these are very complex questions, because they vary so much from individual to individual. But I think the announcement that we might see tomorrow of the direct tax code might actually answer a lot of the questions that you've raised today. That in the new direct tax code, will we start to see, for example, the old tax regime being done away with? Also, on the screen just a while ago, you were showing all the different tax categories, right? And the number of categories is just so high.
Yeah, let's put that back out on the screens. The graphic that Mithali is talking about, the old and the new tax regime, let's just put that back out on our screens. I'm sure someone upstairs is listening to me, but Mithali, go ahead. Like you said, yes, it's tables after tables, and there are now so many categories. Earlier, at least when you looked at it earlier, it was 5%, and then suddenly there was a jump to 20%. There was a huge bracket that was paying 20%, and then the next bracket was paying 30%. Today, of course, some would say that these revisions have made it much easier for the lower salaried individuals to have further disposable income, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's still just a lot of numbers, and you have to look at the reality of the day. It still ends at rupees 15 lakhs.
Precisely. I think that is the biggest problem, Devika, and I think you've pointed it right, absolutely correctly. And this is what we are also struggling with. Somebody who is earning 15 lakhs is being taxed at the same rate. I mean, even though it is of course, it's a progressive taxation regime, still it's the same rate at somebody earning 1 crore or 2 crores. And today in India, when we look at the profile of taxpayers, and of course this data is clearly available with the government of India, they are, they have many data sources. They have data on consumption, they have data on travel, they have data on car ownership, they have data on, so different types of data sources are available, and you can see that the income level of the population has changed. How we define the middle class today has completely changed from, say, 10 years or 15 years ago. So at this point in time, the direct tax code, I believe, if it comes through tomorrow, will be one of the solutions to simplifying the tax regime. That is a clear need of the hour. Simplifying how to pay taxes, because young people are coming in, becoming first-time taxpayers, and they are struggling with, we don't want to have a CA, we want to be able to just go online and pay our taxes. And for that, there's a need to simplify the process of taxation. And the third aspect is to widen the tax base. I think for the last 7 or 8 years that I have been doing budget analysis, and all the years that, all fellow panelists have been doing, we have been talking about widening the tax base, that, how do we get more and more people into the tax net? And for doing that, again, simplifying the process, making it very clear what is taxable income, what is not taxable income, and making things like reducing the number of exemptions, but also reducing the rates.
But Mithali, at the same time, why do you think that the government hesitates? Let's keep that graphic please on air. Why does the government hesitate from increasing, say, from rupees 15 lakhs to rupees 20 lakhs? Why is it that we're not ready to somewhere define what a new middle class or the salaried household looks like? Because you have inflation on the one hand, it is becoming increasingly more expensive to live in cities. We're not seeing the sort of people are not really leaving cities for other areas as we were hoping for. Maybe that will happen. I'm not saying that will never happen in India. Yes, I'm sure in the next 10, 20 years, people will want to move away from Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai. We'll be moving away from these cities and going into other areas, but that's not happening right now. So why do you think the government hesitates in saying that, okay, maybe above rupees 20 lakhs, it'll be a 30% tax, or above rupees 25 lakhs will be a 30% tax?
No, absolutely. I think so far we've seen that, there has not been sufficient thinking, in this area. Maybe there have been proposals which have come in, but because of lack of data, because of lack of the right time, I mean, during COVID and the years that have followed, it was obviously quite impossible to change these categories. And the fact that, the new tax regime was introduced just a year after COVID,
yes.
You couldn't have actually tinkered around so much. But I feel that this is the right time. Our economy is at an inflection point. We have a clear target of Viksit Bharat by 2047. We have a clear target of generating 8 million jobs a year as per the economic survey. We have a clear target of getting more than 8% per annum growth rate for at least a decade as per the economic survey that has been spelled out just today. And to do that, of course, investment is important, but consumption is also important. And to spur consumption, we need to put money back in the hands of the middle class, and, simplifying taxes is a way to do that.
Okay, Yogendra Kapoor, you have your hand up, but I also have a question for you there. Important point there raised by Mitali. When we talk about the plan for Viksit Bharat by 2047, is the road, we're looking at another 22 odd years at this point in time to reach that goal of 2047. But is the path forward then somewhere increasing direct taxes, reducing direct taxes, and increasing disposable income? Because ultimately you also have a very complicated but a strict GST regime in place as well. So should the government be focusing more on collecting those indirect taxes by increasing disposable income in the hands of people? And the only way, strategic way of doing that is obviously by somewhere now tinkering with this income tax table, where the percentages have changed, but not much has changed beyond that.
Devika, one thing which I have always felt is that the government needs to change its mindset. When I say that, you see, I like to figure out 2-3 aspects. One, when we talk of how to, as Mitali just said, about the widening of the tax base, now you see there are some interesting, aspects that are visible in the economy. There is a clear mismatch of expenditure which the people do in comparison to the income that they disclose, and yet they get away. I'm trying to give some analysis as well. You see, in India, if you look at the number of people who are going overseas for travel, or people who are spending within India to buy even a car which is worth more than 10 lakhs. The statistics says that the number is around 5 crores in India on an annual basis when you look at people who are traveling abroad for travel purposes, not business or leisure. I'm not for business. And the people who are purchasing, expensive cars. The fact is that if you look at the tax base, you see in our entire country, the number of tax filers is just 8.2 crore people. And out of that, the people who are paying direct tax is not just around 2.5 crore people, which is, if you look at the population, it is less than 2% of the population paying taxes. So the point is, the government needs to work in that direction, that, any person who is honestly paying taxes is also of the belief that the government is taxing each and every one person in the society. And it also needs to work on promotion of entrepreneurship. If you are looking at Viksit Bharat, then I feel that each and every segment of our country has to be, included in that process. You cannot have a situation, as we see from World Inequality Report, that it is 1% of your population which is holding 40% of your wealth or assets of the country, and at the same time enjoying, income which has got doubled in last 2 decades. Whereas if you look at the bottom 50% of population of India, you see that their income has decreased in last 2 decades. So the point is, the government needs to be very clear that when you are looking at the development of your country into a developed nation, then it has to be a part that everyone is all inclusive in that process. And at the same time, you give, enough of opportunities to people so that entrepreneurship is encouraged.
Okay, I'll leave the last word with Yatendra Khemka. Yatendra Khemka, same question to you. Is the road to a Viksit Bharat through further direct taxes, or does the government really now need to sit and reassess that path and ensure that there is, at the end of the day, more disposable income in the hands of people? What they choose to spend that on ultimately does circle and come back somewhere to the revenue and the coffers of the government itself.
Devika, you are seeing in last 3-4 years that we are beating our revenue targets every year, and whether it is direct tax or indirect tax. And when we say that only 2% is giving taxes, we are somewhere wrong. We are paying taxes. Whole population of ours is paying taxes, and taxes are as high as 28% of GST, or 18% of GST, or 12% of GST. So most of the people are paying that, and government has to be rationalized on that front also, and they should improve their tax administration as far as the collection of taxes are concerned, and to make more people taxable and liable to pay taxes. And I hope that a lot of work yet to be done on that aspect. And on the other hand, we are seeing that around 80 crore people we are going to distribute free rations since last 5 years, and we are committed to do that in the coming years also. So the population structure or demography of the country is like that more than 100 crore people are still struggling to live their life with pride, and we should support them definitely. But on the other hand also, that there must be more taxes who are earning, and as Yogendra has said, that people are spending money on tourism, on buying cars, and Prime Minister also said that people are buying cars of crores of rupees but not paying taxes, and mentioned few classes in their speech, in his speeches many times. So we have to be more honest in paying taxes, paying our liabilities, though are under that bracket. And I hope many things has been done in last years, but more yet to become and more yet to be do. But corruption, we have to work on that to some extent, at least to reduce it in some percentage terms at least, and give relief to middle class so that they can pay their due taxes honestly and easily.
Okay, I want to leave the last word with Mithali. I just have 30 seconds left, but Mithali, I want to understand from your perspective, can a rising economy like India really continue to rely on a direct tax regime to fund its ambitions and goals and dreams?
So I think, Devika, globally we are seeing this conversation, right, with the US actually leading this conversation and asking, can we reduce or even do away with income tax? And there are economies across the world like Dubai and Singapore, for example, which don't have direct income taxes, and they rely in fact on corporate taxes and indirect taxes to fund government revenue. But I think that for India, in the years going forward, we still have to rely on income tax because it accounts for almost 50% to 60% of our tax revenue, and that redistribution is still very critical because of the levels of poverty that we still have in our country and the level of social protection that we want to offer to low income communities and the level of infrastructure investment that we still require. But at the same time, it is important that that burden is distributed across the country in different ways. Innovative tax regimes are the future, and we can definitely leverage our digital public infrastructure to make taxation much more efficient.
Okay, all right. That's all the time that I have. I thank all of our panelists for joining us to take the conversation forward. Of course, do tune in to NewsX tomorrow as we continue our coverage of the budget. With that, a very short break.